I was going to say on this topic as a whole, I read a great article online that was called "Everything I Love is Problematic." And it really resonated with me because I feel that way a lot, especially when you take a closer look at the stuff, you know, the popular culture and the music and the people and the artists that you've been familiar with, you know, since you were a teenager. If you go back and when you watch, you know, 16 Candles and you're like, oh my God, that's a rape scene. Mm-hmm. You know, you didn't catch it when you were 14 and you thought it was the greatest thing ever to watch a John Hughes film. But you learn about those things as you get older, and you have to come to terms with that. And you have to decide how you want to respond. For example, I am a massive Harry Potter fan. I heard a review of Harry Potter on NPR, and it was the first book had just been released in America. I bought 5 copies that day on my way home from work, and I gave them out. I kept one for me, and I gave them out to pretty much all the kids in my family that were, and my friends that were of an age to be reading something like that. And I've introduced probably 50, 60 people to Harry Potter in that way. And I love Harry Potter, but I had to come to terms with J.K. Rowling being really, really a problem in my life, and how the things that she says and does affect the people that matter to me. Mm-hmm. And so I had to come to terms with that. Like, you know, I don't believe in burning books. Do I give away my Harry Potter books? Mm-hmm. Do I just pretend like, you know, that was a different era and it doesn't matter? But I mean, for me, the big decision had to come down to, well, I can't unlike the things that I like about Harry Potter, even when I was reading it and I realized, you know, like a lot of the non-white people in Harry Potter are really awful stereotypes. But there are good things about Harry Potter too, and I don't want to give up on those, but I have made a conscious decision that I don't buy any Harry Potter merchandising, any licensed Harry Potter work, because I don't feel like I want to put my money into something that will benefit J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. And I feel that way about a lot of things, you know, a lot of artists that are problematic for one reason or another. I don't buy any more R. Kelly music, and I don't, you know, I don't pretend like those things aren't there. And if I'm having a conversation with somebody about something like that, I feel like I should point out, like, yes, I watched 16 Candles again. If you're going to watch this with your teenagers, please make sure they're aware that is a rape scene. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you can't watch Gone with the Wind and pretend like it's not happening, you know? And so I think for me personally, that's the line that has to be drawn. Like, you have to acknowledge where things are problematic and then decide how you're going to respond to that. And if that means, like, you never listen to Miles Davis again or something, or, you know, you avoid Picasso exhibits, or you know, you no longer, you know, go to the Thriller dance every Halloween. Whatever that thing is for you, that's your choice. But you've got to understand that we are surrounded constantly by things that are problematic, whether we're aware of the problematic bits yet or not. And as we get older, you will find more and more problematic things in the things that you loved. I mean, I was an avid reader as a kid, and I went back and reread some books that literally changed my life when I was a teenager. And they're so, I couldn't even recommend them now to other people. There's so much in them that is just not okay with me, mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, I think that what you're speaking to, Camille, kind of reminds me of what Eric closed the last section with, this idea of like this, like admitting that we're fallible, like being willing to admit that like we are problematic. Everything you love is problematic because like we live under white supremacy. Like, I'm a white person, I benefit from white supremacy. Like, just existing, I am hurting other people. And it's important for everybody to acknowledge this. I think there's this need because we have this binary thinking of like heroes and villains, and there's nothing in between. And so it becomes like J.K. Rowling's the best in the world. We like just act like we just deify the creators that we love, such that when they do prove themselves to be either problematic or hateful or whatever, it hurts us on a core level. It destroys our ego, because our ego is attached to belief that they are a perfect person. And then we have to do this really complex system of like negotiating with our own feelings. And I think that we tend to, because it's painful, try and shy away from that. We don't want to engage with that. And so we tend to either say, cut it out, like anybody who likes Harry Potter is a terrible person. And like we just kind of put people into boxes so that we can just justify our own discomfort with these things. I think that the gift that comes with acknowledging that artists are people and people are problematic is, I think it encourages people to read closer. Like you were saying, Camille, like J.K. Rowling's politics aren't that great in general. And maybe her transphobia actually allowed people to read Harry Potter closer and to look at her racial politics, her gender politics a little bit more thoughtfully. And I think that's a sign of love for art. That's a sign of connection with art, that we are actually willing to engage with it on multiple levels. Like that's what I think art is for, right? And so if we have the opportunity to say like, okay, like I loved Call of Cthulhu when I was a kid. I didn't see any of the racial stuff. And now I totally see that H.P. Lovecraft was a racist piece of shit. Okay, great. You can read his stuff and you can see the racism in it and you can see where it comes from and you can still love Call of Cthulhu, but you cannot separate racism from H.P. Lovecraft's work. It's impossible. And you can see it. And you cannot separate shitty sexual politics from a lot of John Hughes's work. It's part of it. But that doesn't mean you have to then erase it from the canon and pretend it doesn't exist. You have to acknowledge that this is an artifact of a time, of a person. How am I choosing to engage with that? Knowing these things now, having more information rather than less.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing with that too is also note who you're consuming, whose work we're looking at, right? So if Harry Potter is feeling problematic and when I'm looking at there's all these racial stereotypes, etc., what about turning to Black fantasy authors and consuming other voices? I would strongly recommend, for example, Nnedi Okorafor's series, Akata Witch. Amazing series about a group of young witches who are exploring like how do they level up and who do they learn from, but looking at it from a lens of Nigerian culture. Okay, great. That puts me into a different place. And if we look at the words of different peoples, we learn new things. If I look at art from different culture, I have different forms of movement in my heart. And so for me, it's also looking at my bookshelf and saying, what's in this? Who are speaking in it? And am I hearing the voices that will wake me up in different ways? And so that's the other thing I've been looking at is almost like all of the voices we just mentioned were all white authors or producers. I'm squinting. Which one wasn't?
R. Kelly is not white.
I was thinking, no, R. Kelly is definitely, and Michael Jackson isn't.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the books.
I understand where you're coming from. Yes.
My brain went to the books, not the music. My sincere apologies.
It's easy because we throw out a lot of names.
But it also tells you which voices did I hear. No, seriously, like where are my biases in even listening to what we were talking about?